case study with foster care. Now, foster care is when, for some reason, the parents can't take care of the child or are unfit at a time, and the state will take control of the child. And the state will place this child into a home, ideally, that is safe for them, that they can stay until either the home they were in becomes fit to live in, or until they can get adopted. And so the state wanted to outsource this. They wanted to find vendors to identify the homes and then to place the children in these homes. And so they outsourced it. They ran it traditionally, and it cost them $10.5 million. But because of political and legal reasons, they had to rerun the whole process. So this was a great opportunity to use best value. It went from 10.5 to 8.7. And 4 vendors were selected out of the 10. Both systems identified the same vendors. They divided the state into 5 regions, and the vendors were assigned to each region. Now, they used best value for procurement, but not for clarification. Now, this is what the client determined should be measured. And they said, in their RFP, this is what you have to do. And everyone signed a contract, right? So everyone should be able to do this. You all agreed to it. They get into execution, and what happens? The vendors begin asking questions about what the metrics mean. And then the client begins wondering, yeah, you're right, what does that mean? And they have, what's not shown in this, they have a definitions page to help you understand the metrics. Anytime there's a definitions page to understand the metrics, that is not a good metric. In the end, they found out no one was measuring these things. They couldn't measure it. They weren't fit to measure it. And what could they do to the vendors? They hired them all. So we simplified the metrics. They brought us back in. And we told them at this point, there's only so much you can do. So the least thing, one of the minimum things you should make them do is measure how many homes they have, or how many homes they're going to identify so children can be placed. And so they said, okay, we can do that. So they set a projected, all the vendors got together, they sent in projections for the year, each month, how many homes they would get. So at the beginning, they wouldn't find any homes because they're ramping up, educating people, their people, but eventually they'll start getting the homes. So by the end of the year, they will have identified 797 new homes. Now, if I'm a client, one thing I want to know, how did you make this projection? And how do I know this projection is accurate? So we told the client, just ask all the vendors, how do you know your projection is accurate? How did you make this? But they said, no, they're experts. Of course they know how to make projections. Why would they give us projections that they can't do? Oh, the questions we asked them. How do you know it's possible? What happens if they don't get that many homes? And then the client said, well, we'll punish them. Well, how will you punish them? Like, I don't know. It's a difficult question. So, the actual. This was followed by each month many meetings, getting together, hour-long phone conversations that I put on speaker and then put on mute. And they would be saying, we need to get more serious. Are you vendors serious? If you don't perform, you're not going to get a renewal of contract. You guys have to do more. What's going wrong? And then the vendors would give excuses. They'd say, well, you're not helping us with fingerprinting fast enough, or, it just takes more time. We'll get there. Next year, they hand in projections. Like, okay, this time, surely you'll ask them how they made their projections. They're like, no, the vendors just told us it was a bad beginning year, natural, but this year will be better. That year was not better. Better? More phone conversations, the same thing. We looked at the vendor projections, what they're supposed to do to fulfill their contract. 2 of the largest ones were hitting half of that. Everyone's blaming everyone else. Fingerprinting's taking too long. Vendors aren't serious is what the clients are thinking. So, discuss this now. Who is at fault in this situation? What's the problem and what should be done? Who is at fault here? Who would you blame? Who says the client? Who says the vendor? Wow. What's the problem? Wasn't a clear defined scope? The client determined the metrics? No director's report? Yeah, there's definitely a lack of transparency. More communication, blaming, clients thinking the vendors are cheating them, aren't serious enough. Let me show you some things before I tell you who I think is at fault. They hand in their next year's projections. And we tell them, and I was on this project, so I was actually the one telling them. I said, I did an analysis for them that made it very clear, look, the projections are never right. And the first 2013, I actually, based on those, created projections for them for 2014 that were almost dead on. And I told them, look, these aren't accurate, and these aren't reasonable, and you need to ask them how they're making these projections. And then I get an email back. This isn't finished. The year isn't finished. And so this is when I stopped collecting metrics, so only the first 5 months. But it follows the same trend. And in the email at this point, they responded, the projections are based on need and not off of previous results. They need 900 homes. So that's the metric. Yes. Let's look at things now. Let's look at observing what's going on. Over the years, total number of homes was improving. All vendors were improving each year. They were doing much better than the state was doing before the vendors came. Much better. But the client's still not satisfied. And the vendors are in constant stress. The client is at fault for having unrealistic expectations. But I blame the vendors. Because the vendors are the experts. The vendors need to simplify it to understand and show reality. And because it's not simple, because the client doesn't know what's going on, you get all the results we talked about in the beginning. More communication, more management direction and control. The vendors were being reactive to the client. They didn't have a plan. They didn't know what they're doing in terms of why things are happening. They didn't know the right metrics to show that they're actually high performing. And their focus was maintaining a good relationship. Now, what was the result of not making it simple? The client's solution, finally, was to hire 7 more contractors, because obviously there's not enough. Increase the metrics from 20 to 31, and then they want those 31 metrics, not just from the general, but they found out they're having sub-vendors. So they want it for all their sub-vendors. So now you have a list of 400 metrics that will be reported monthly to the client. More meetings too. But the vendors kind of got it what they were looking for, because they didn't simplify it.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to our channel for more content. If you have any questions about the best value approach or for Dr. Dean, leave them in the comment section below and we'll get to them in a later video. Thanks. We'll see you next time.